I was paying for a cake at the grocery store when the cashier, a man around my age, maybe in his 60s, suddenly grabbed my arm. His grip wasn't harsh, but the look in his eyes made my stomach twist. He leaned in, his voice low, and whispered something I never expected to hear. His words struck me like a physical blow, something about my son and his family, so shocking that for a moment, I couldn't move. Then, as if nothing had happened, he let go and went right back to scanning groceries. But I stood there frozen, the receipt trembling between my fingers, trying to make sense of what he had just said. I slipped out the store's back exit, desperate for air. My heart pounded so loudly it echoed in my ears. Could a stranger really know something so devastating, and could it possibly be true? Or was it just a misunderstanding from someone who had no real idea of my life? I found a hiding spot behind a row of dumpsters near the parking lot. From there, no one could see me, but I could see everything. If there was truth in that man's words, I'd soon find out for myself. My name is Adeline Thorne. I'm 67 years old, and I've spent my entire life trying to hold my family together. I live alone in a small downtown apartment, surviving on a pension that barely covers the basics. Every month, I stretch every dollar, choosing carefully where each one goes, always putting others' needs before my own. My son Owen married Sienna 3 years ago. From the beginning, something about her felt distant. I tried to be patient. I told myself she was shy, maybe overwhelmed. But as time passed, little things in her behavior started to bother me. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to plant seeds of trouble in my son's marriage. Her family, especially her father Leonard, was always kind on the surface. But there was something behind their politeness, a heaviness, a look, that never sat quite right with me. And they were always talking about their money problems. Rent due. Bills piling up. Medical expenses. Not enough food. And whenever they asked, I did what I could. So did Owen. From where I was hiding, I had a perfect view of the store's main entrance. Owen was waiting for me in the car, but my eyes stayed fixed on the doorway. The cashier's warning echoed relentlessly in my mind. Barely 2 minutes passed before I saw something that turned my whole world on its side. Leonard walked out of the store carrying several bags, big, glossy ones. Not groceries. No. These were from one of those luxury stores I'd only ever passed by, the kind with gold lettering and prices I never dared to look at. My heart sped up. He walked straight to a car parked just a few feet from me. Not the old, beat-up car they always complained about. This was a brand new vehicle, shining like it had just rolled out of the showroom. The tires were spotless. The paint glowed under the afternoon sun. I watched him place the expensive bags gently in the trunk like they held something precious. Then he pulled out his phone and started talking, calm, relaxed, like a man with not a single financial worry in the world. At that moment, every story Sienna had told Owen came flooding back. They couldn't pay the rent. They needed money for her father's treatments. They were struggling for groceries. And every time, my son, my good-hearted boy, helped them. But what I was seeing now, the luxury bags, the new car, Leonard's easy smile, none of it matched the desperation they had described. Not even close. A cold sensation crept through my body, the kind you feel when you just know something terrible is unfolding. The cashier's warning kept circling in my mind, and for the first time, his words started to make a painful kind of sense. Could it really be possible that my daughter-in-law's family had been lying to us all along? Leonard finished his phone call and walked back toward the store entrance, scanning the parking lot as if he was checking whether someone had caught him. That cautious, almost nervous look made my stomach twist. Something wasn't right. I stayed hidden. My instincts told me there was more to uncover, and after what I had already seen, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I needed the truth before I said a word to Owen. As I crouched there, my mind drifted back to how this day had even begun. That morning, I'd woken up with a mix of excitement and worry. It had been months since I'd visited Sienna's family, and I wanted to bring something nice. I went to my tiny kitchen and opened the jar where I kept my savings. Counting those coins had become a heartbreaking routine. I separated the wrinkled bills I'd scraped together over weeks, money saved by giving up small comforts like a cup of coffee or a magazine. I had exactly $43. 20 of it I planned to spend on a decent cake. The rest I needed for my medication and groceries for the week. I showered, took extra care getting ready, and chose my best dress, the simple one that still made me feel put together. I brushed my hair, trying to hide the growing streaks of gray, and put on the fake pearl earrings my mother had given me decades ago. Before leaving, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 67-year-old woman who had worked all her life, raised her son alone, and was still clinging to a family that seemed to value money more than love. Owen picked me up right on time, as he always did. He looked tense, but I assumed he was just nervous about the visit. We made small talk on the drive, his job, office frustrations, but he avoided talking about Sienna or her family. That struck me as odd. He usually told me everything. When we reached their neighborhood, I asked him to stop at the grocery store so I could buy a fresh cake. He offered to come along, but I told him I'd be quick. The bakery section had a few options, and I picked a simple vanilla cake. It was $18, $2 less than I expected, which made me happy because it meant I could buy a small greeting card too. At the checkout is where everything changed. The cashier, a man close to my age, rang up the cake without a word, until he saw the name on the card I tried to use. It was declined, just as I knew it would be, so I pulled out my cash. That was when his expression shifted. He looked at me more closely, said my name, Adeline Thorne, and asked whether I was Owen's mother. When I said yes, a worried, almost fearful look washed over him. What he whispered next is something I'll never forget. His words were sharp, painful, and so unbelievable I refused to accept them at first. He told me that Sienna's family came into that store all the time, spending hundreds on imported foods and premium meats, even as they constantly asked my son for money. He said Leonard bragged about how much Owen helped them every month. He told me he'd watched Leonard buy wine that cost more than what I spent on a full week's groceries. He told me Sienna frequently bought expensive beauty products and designer clothing, always paying in cash. And he said it wasn't right that a hard-working young man and his elderly mother were being taken advantage of by people living far beyond their means. He admitted he spoke up because he'd seen me counting coins to pay for a simple cake while they threw money around on luxuries. He said his own mother had gone through the same thing, and he regretted not acting sooner back then. I left the store in a daze, unable to process anything. For years, I had trusted Sienna and her family. I had watched Owen worry himself sick, work extra hours, and send money whenever they asked. I had helped too, giving what little I could. But that cashier's words planted a seed of doubt that grew fast, and painfully. That's why I hid. I needed proof. I needed my own eyes to tell me whether I had been blind for years. And from behind those dumpsters, watching the parking lot with perfect clarity, I got my answer. The smell of garbage didn't matter anymore. Truth mattered. When Leonard walked out with those expensive bags from a store I knew only by its sky-high prices, my heart tightened. One purchase from that place could wipe out my monthly budget. He carried himself like a man with no worries in the world. His clothes were new, his shoes polished, his watch shining even from a distance. Nothing about him resembled someone struggling. And the car, brand new, gleaming, was worth more money than I had ever seen in my entire life. How could someone driving a vehicle like that possibly need constant help? Watching him talk on the phone, relaxed and cheerful, was the final confirmation. Over the months, there had been little signs, Sienna mentioning expensive restaurants, gifts from friends, unbelievable sales on new clothes, social media posts showing a lifestyle that didn't match their cries for help. Suddenly, everything made sense. Leonard ended his phone call and began walking back toward the grocery store entrance. His movements were calm and confident, like a man with absolutely nothing pressing on his shoulders. From my hiding spot, I watched him closely. His clothes weren't just new, they were quality pieces. His shirt had the kind of perfect tailoring you only get from specialty shops, And his trousers were pressed so sharply they could have come straight from the dry cleaner. Even his shoes, now visible as he passed closer to me, looked like genuine, expensive leather. While I waited, trying to see what else might happen, I suddenly heard voices to my right. Two older women were pushing carts toward their cars, chatting in the casual way neighbors do. I didn't pay much attention, until one of them said Sienna's name. "Did you see the new dress Sienna was wearing at the mall yesterday?" said a gray-haired woman about my age. "It must have cost at least $200. I saw the exact same one in that pricey store upstairs." Her friend, thin with glasses, replied knowingly, "Oh, that's not all, Hermione. I saw her buying beauty products from that French cosmetics store. My granddaughter works there and says Sienna's a regular. She spends like money comes pouring out of the sky." My heartbeat quickened. They were talking about the same Sienna who told my son they were struggling to buy groceries. The same woman who had called just last week asking for help with her father's medication. Hermione continued, "What surprises me is how she's always buying new things, but then tells everyone their family is barely scraping by. My friend Leonard works at the bank, and he says the deposits they make don't match the story they tell at all." "Oh, Hermione, that's gossip," the other woman said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Still, I do wonder how they afford the rent on that big house if things are really as bad as they say." Gossip or not, every word felt like a knife. The second woman went on, "My daughter lives on their block. She says delivery trucks from the most expensive market in the city show up almost every week, orders the rest of us would need months to save for." Their voices drifted off as they walked away, but I caught enough. They mentioned parties Sienna's family had hosted recently, lavish gatherings with high-end food, imported wine, costly decorations. Each detail hit me like a blow. For months, I had pitied that family. I had worried about them, encouraged Owen to help them, and even given from my own scarce savings. I remembered the night Sienna had called me crying, saying they had to choose between food and medicine for Leonard. I barely slept from worry. The next morning, I walked to the bank, withdrew $150 from my emergency fund, money meant for my medical needs, and handed it to her because I couldn't bear their suffering. And now? Hearing these women describe that same family's luxury made me feel like the most foolish woman alive. How had I missed the signs that everyone else seemed to know? Just then, Leonard walked out of the store again, this time with a smaller bag. He headed toward his car but stopped to talk to a man washing a vehicle nearby. I couldn't hear their conversation, but both men looked relaxed, friendly, even. The worker's body language showed respect, like Leonard was someone of status in the neighborhood. A few minutes later, I saw Leonard hand the man something. Money. Several bills, passed casually, without hesitation. How could a man in financial crisis hand out money so easily? My phone vibrated. It was Owen asking why I was taking so long. I had forgotten he was still waiting in the car, probably worried. I quickly replied that I'd been stuck in a long line, another lie. It hurt to lie to my own child, but I needed more time. I couldn't walk back with half-formed suspicions. I needed certainty. As I finished the message, Leonard got into his gleaming car. The engine started smoothly, the unmistakable sound of a well-made, newer model. I watched him drive away with the ease of someone who had never known financial strain. I slipped out from my hiding place and walked toward Owen's car, forcing myself to appear normal even though my thoughts were spinning. Every step I took made me recall overlooked details from the past months, things that now made painfully perfect sense. When I reached the car, Owen looked at me with concern. "Mom, are you okay? You look pale. Did they take forever with your checkout?" "Just a long line, son," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Weekends are always busy." In reality, my heart was pounding so loudly I feared he could hear it. Owen started the car and began driving toward Sienna's parents' house. I tried to make normal conversation, but my mind kept replaying everything from the parking lot. Each passing street brought me closer to a family I now viewed through completely different eyes. "How's Leonard's job been lately?" I asked casually. Sienna said things were difficult for him. Owen sighed. Yeah, Mom. She told me he had to cut his hours. The company's struggling, so we've been helping them more. It's been rough for them. Nothing about that matched the prosperous, carefree man I'd just watched shopping at expensive stores and handing out money. A man truly worried about his finances wouldn't be living like that. And how do you feel about all this? I asked softly. You've been working so many extra hours. Well, Mom, they're my family now, he said, his voice tired. Sienna's my wife. When you marry someone, you help their family too. If they need support, it's my responsibility. His words broke me. My generous, hardworking son was sacrificing himself for people who were clearly exploiting him. How long could this continue before he found himself in serious trouble? We entered Sienna's family's neighborhood. The houses were tidy, lawns perfectly trimmed. Not wealthy, but definitely not a place for people drowning in poverty. As Owen parked, I took a closer look at their house. 2 stories, fresh paint, new curtains, a recently renovated front door. The house looks well kept, I said, fishing for information. Didn't you say they were struggling with repairs? Oh, yeah, Owen said. Leonard picked up some extra weekend work to cover the urgent stuff. He's been working hard to keep it all maintained. Another story that didn't add up. If he was working extra weekends to survive, how did he have time, or money, to shop at high-end stores in the middle of the day? We walked toward the front door. I carried my cake and a growing feeling of dread. Just as Owen reached for the doorbell, the door swung open, and Sienna greeted us with a bright smile. My breath caught. She looked nothing like the struggling woman she claimed to be. Her dress was clearly expensive, the fabric alone spoke quality. The cut was flawless. Her shoes were new, her handbag perfectly coordinated. But her hair and makeup stunned me the most. She had a fresh, professional cut with shimmering highlights. Her makeup was immaculate, the kind you only get with top-tier products. Adeline, it's so good to see you, she said, hugging me. Her perfume was unmistakable, an expensive scent I had once admired but never could afford. You look lovely, I managed. That dress is beautiful. This old thing, she laughed lightly. Got it on clearance ages ago. You know how it is, I can't resist a good deal. A perfect echo of what the women outside had said. There was always an excuse, always a story behind every luxurious purchase. Too many coincidences to ignore. We stepped into the house, and immediately I noticed the changes. The living room had been redecorated. The old furniture was gone, replaced by a new leather sofa, a polished glass coffee table, and various decorative pieces that screamed money. A massive flat-screen television hung on the wall, something that definitely hadn't been there before. And in that moment, everything I'd seen, heard, and suspected finally aligned into a painful, undeniable truth. It was a recent model, the kind that easily costs several $1,000s. How could a family in financial crisis explain a luxury television like that? Dad, look who came to visit. Sienna called toward the back of the house. Leonard stepped out from what looked like the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. The moment he saw me, something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even alarm, but it vanished as quickly as it came. He slipped into his usual pleasant smile. Adeline, wonderful to see you, he said warmly as he approached. I hope you came hungry. Sienna made a delicious meal today. It was the same Leonard I had seen at the grocery store barely an hour earlier, yet now he was acting as if he'd been home all day. His clothes were identical, only an apron had been added, as though he'd been cooking. I brought a cake to go with everything, I said, handing him the box. I hope you like it. Oh, what a lovely gesture! Sienna exclaimed. But it wasn't necessary. You know you're always welcome here. As she spoke, I glanced past her into the kitchen. The counters were packed with ingredients and cooking tools, enough for an elaborate feast. I recognized expensive cuts of meat, unusual vegetables, and bottles of imported seasonings. The amount of food could have fed a large family for days. And everything on those counters cost far more than I could justify for my own meals. Did you two prepare all this? I asked, genuinely surprised. Well, Leonard said with a light chuckle, we wanted to do something special for your visit. Owen's mother doesn't stop by every day. And besides, we found some ingredients on sale, so we stocked up. The miraculous sales again. At this point, I didn't know if this family had supernatural luck or if these excuses were nothing more than masks. Owen seemed completely unaware. He chatted happily with Sienna about work and plans for the week. His ease told me everything, he truly believed their version of reality. But I couldn't ignore the truth staring me in the face. Every detail of that house, every polished explanation, every expensive item, they all whispered the same thing. This family was not struggling. Not at all. During lunch, I tried to keep the conversation normal, though I watched everything closely. The table was set with dishes I didn't remember seeing before, plates and glasses that were definitely not cheap. The food was plentiful, multiple main dishes, fancy salads, sides that required costly ingredients. Leonard opened a bottle of wine and poured it into crystal glasses. I recognized the label, $1.50 at least. But it was the master bedroom that shook me. On the dresser sat several high-end shopping bags, some still unopened. I glimpsed a few price tags, numbers that would have made anyone in true financial distress faint. Sienna's been shopping? I asked lightly. Leonard gave a nervous laugh. She found incredible clearance sales. Sometimes it's smart to buy things when they're discounted, even if you don't need them right away. That logic made no sense. A family on the brink financially doesn't buy things they don't need yet, no matter how good the sale is. As we returned to the living room, my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. When I opened it, I froze. It was from the cashier at the grocery store. He must have found a way to reach me. He'd taken a photo of a receipt dated just 2 days ago. Total, over $400. The items, premium imported meats, seafood, specialty cheeses, expensive wines, gourmet ingredients, luxury items, every one of them. Name on the receipt, Leonard Williams. Attached was a message. Mrs. Thorne, I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should see this. This is from 2 days ago. Your family needs to know the truth. My heart pounded. The evidence was undeniable, black and white proof of everything I feared. I hid my phone before anyone saw my face change, but my mind was already racing, connecting every detail from the moment I arrived. And for the first time, the full truth began to take shape, clear, sharp, and deeply disturbing. We walked back into the living room where Owen and Sienna were still chatting happily. My son looked relaxed, content, enjoying what he believed was warm family time. He had no idea he was watching a well-rehearsed performance. Mom, are you okay? Owen asked, probably noticing the change in my face. You look a little pale. I'm just a bit tired, I lied softly. I'm not used to long outings anymore. Sienna immediately offered to make me tea or bring me something to help me feel better. On another day, I might have found her concern touching. But now, understanding the truth behind her carefully polished manners, her kindness felt staged. For the next hour, I stayed quiet and observant, mentally listing every inconsistency, every unexplained luxury, every excuse that no longer made sense. The list kept growing. Sienna's new clothes. Leonard's expensive car. The immaculate house. The lavish meal. The pricey wine. The shopping bags in their bedroom. The $400 grocery receipt on my phone. But the worst part, the part that cut the deepest, was realizing this deception had likely been happening for months, maybe years. How much money had my son given them? How many sacrifices had he made? And how many had I made, thinking I was helping a struggling family? When it was time to leave, my mind was firmly made up. I could no longer stay silent. Owen deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it would be. I had a responsibility to protect him from further manipulation. During the drive home, Owen talked happily about the visit, how kind Sienna's family looked and how nice the afternoon had been. His words felt like tiny blades, each one reminding me of the lie he was living. Yes, I answered carefully. They look very well. Maybe, a little too well for a family in such terrible financial trouble. That drive home was one of the hardest moments of my life. With every mile, the house faded behind us, but the truth I had uncovered grew heavier. My thoughts were tangled, fear, anger, disbelief, and a rising sense of injustice I could barely contain. Owen drove calmly, even whistling softly. To him, it had been a lovely family lunch. He had no idea his mother had been quietly collecting evidence of what looked like an ongoing, deliberate scam. "Mom," he said while waiting at a red light, "it makes me so happy to see you getting along with Sienna's family. I know you had your doubts about our marriage at first, but now you can see what good people they are." His words shattered me. My only son, so generous, so trusting, had been deceived by people who had turned manipulation into an art form. "Owen," I began gently, "have you ever noticed anything inconsistent in the stories Sienna shares about their financial problems?" He glanced at me, confused. "Inconsistent? What do you mean?" "Well," I said, choosing each word with care, "today I noticed they have many new things, the television, some furniture, Sienna's clothing. All of those cost money." Owen sighed, and I could see my comment struck a nerve. "Mom, I already told you. Leonard has extra jobs. And Sienna finds amazing bargains. Not everything that looks new is expensive." "But don't you find it strange," I pressed, keeping my tone calm, "that a family needing constant help for basic needs can afford so many comforts?" "They're not luxuries, Mom," he insisted, sounding defensive. "They're basic items they managed to buy with effort." The TV was second-hand. The furniture was a one-time deal. Sienna's clothes were on clearance. Every explanation was word for word what I'd heard at lunch. It was like listening to rehearsed lines. I tried another angle. "Son, have you ever seen receipts or proof of these deals? Or gone with Sienna when she finds these incredible bargains?" His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Mom, why are you asking so many questions? Sienna is my wife. If she tells me something was on sale, I believe her. Marriage is about trust." And there it was. Owen had never verified a single story. He trusted them blindly, because he loved them. "Of course, sweetheart," I said softly. "Trust matters deeply. But so does protecting yourself, especially from people who might take advantage of that trust." "Are you saying Sienna and her family are lying to me?" he asked, now clearly upset. "Mom, that's a very serious accusation." "I'm not accusing anyone," I said quickly, realizing I had pushed him too close to the edge. "I'm only sharing the worries of a mother who loves you, and wants to see you safe and happy." The rest of the drive passed in a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Owen was clearly turning my words over in his mind, but I could see it in his face. Everything I'd said had only made him defensive, not thoughtful. Any hint of criticism toward Sienna or her family felt to him like a personal attack. When we pulled up to my apartment, he helped me out of the car, but even his goodbye hug felt distant, cooler than the ones he used to give me. "Mom," he said quietly, "I really hope you'll give Sienna's family a fair chance. They're good people just trying their best." "I'll keep that in mind, son," I replied. And I knew he took my words as a promise to be more understanding, when in truth, I felt the exact opposite. That night, in my small apartment, I curled up in my old armchair with a cup of tea, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. My thoughts were scattered, loud, overwhelming. I had more than enough circumstantial evidence, neighbors' comments, things I had seen myself, and now the photo of the $400 grocery receipt. And on the other hand, I had a son who believed, with all his heart, that his wife's family was struggling, suffering, barely getting by. Every time I tried to push back on that belief, it only drove him to defend them more fiercely. I unlocked my phone and looked again at the photo the cashier had sent me. Over $400 in luxury items. 2 days before our visit. That was more than I spend on groceries in an entire month. As I stared at those numbers, memories came flooding back, Owen coming home exhausted after extra shifts, trying to scrape together money for Sienna's family. Me, dipping into my small savings, feeling guilty if I didn't help them. Slowly, the anger I had been swallowing all day rose up in my chest. It wasn't just the money. It was the manipulation. The way they'd taken advantage of Owen's kindness. The way they had woven lie after lie, all to keep us feeling sorry for them. And what hurt the most was the thought that, while we worried and sacrificed, they might have been laughing behind our backs. But even with all that, the hardest part was figuring out what to do next. I had evidence. I had patterns. I had more than enough reason for concern. But I also had a son who would never believe a word against his wife unless the proof was absolutely undeniable. If I pushed too hard, I risked losing him. If I stayed silent, they would keep draining him, financially, emotionally, maybe even breaking him completely. I knew then I needed more. Something so clear, so solid, so irrefutable that even Owen couldn't explain it away with excuses about miraculous discounts or last-minute extra work. So that night, before I finally drifted to sleep, I made a decision that would change everything. I would not confront Owen again, not until I had evidence no one could dismiss. Instead, I would do my own quiet investigating and gather real proof that couldn't be twisted or softened. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Every conversation with Owen became an exhausting performance, me pretending everything was fine while my mind worked nonstop in the background. The truth sat in my chest like a weight I couldn't put down. During that week, the cashier sent me 3 more messages. Each one confirmed more of what I had feared. He sent photos of other receipts, purchases made by Leonard and Sienna that showed the same pattern of extravagant, unnecessary spending. One of the receipts totaled more than $600, 2 bottles of French champagne over $100 each, imported seafood, gourmet cheeses. The date on the receipt was the very same day Sienna had called Owen in tears, claiming they couldn't pay their rent. I also heard from Hermione, the woman I'd overheard at the grocery store. She managed to get my number through a mutual friend, and when she called, she sounded genuinely concerned. She told me she felt I deserved to know more about what was really going on. Hermione explained that Sienna's family had been hosting regular parties at their house, lavish events with professional catering and pricey decorations. She described Leonard's birthday celebration, a gathering that, according to several guests, cost thousands of dollars in food, alcohol, and entertainment. Adeline, she said during our phone call, my daughter lives on their block. She sees delivery trucks showing up all the time, expensive clothes, appliances, new furniture. It's constant. And it's not the behavior of a family in any kind of financial crisis. Every new detail made my silence harder to hold. But I also knew I had to wait for the right moment, one when Owen couldn't brush it all aside with excuses or wishful thinking. That moment came on a Wednesday night when Owen stopped by after work. He looked exhausted, worn thin. When I asked what was wrong, he told me Sienna had just asked him for more money, this time for a medical emergency involving Leonard. He needs a minor surgery, Owen said, rubbing his temples, stress written all over his face. Insurance won't cover everything. They need $200 by Friday. I've been working double shifts to help. That was it for me. $200 for a medical emergency, from the same people who had spent $600 on champagne and seafood a few days earlier. I couldn't watch my son be drained any further. Owen, I said softly, taking his hands in mine, I need to show you something. And before I do, I want you to understand, I'm doing this because I love you. I can't stand watching you be taken advantage of. I pulled out my phone and showed him the first photo, the $400 receipt. His eyes widened at the date and the total. Before he could speak, I slid to the next photo, and the next, and the next. Mom, where did you get this? He asked, staring at the images with a mix of confusion and disbelief. How do you even know these are real? So I explained everything, the cashier, the neighbors, what I'd seen myself that day at the store. I laid out every detail carefully, calmly, step by step. There has to be an explanation, Owen said, but the certainty in his voice was gone. Maybe Leonard had extra work, or maybe they got money from somewhere else. Son, I said gently, these luxury purchases happened on the exact same days Sienna called you saying they couldn't pay rent or buy groceries. Isn't that too big of a coincidence? I watched the truth slowly take hold. His eyes moved from the photos to my face, searching for some way, any way, to deny what he already knew deep down. And here, I added, showing him Hermione's message about the extravagant parties, this is how they live when no one's watching. This isn't a family in crisis. Owen pushed back his chair and began pacing my tiny living room. I could see memories rushing through him, conversations, excuses, all the little things he had ignored because he loved Sienna and wanted to believe her. But why would they do this? He finally asked, his voice breaking. Why would Sienna lie about something so serious? Because it worked, I said quietly. You trusted them. You never questioned them. You've been giving them money for months, and they took advantage of your kindness. Tears welled up in his eyes, and my heart cracked. But I knew this pain was necessary, because it was the only way out of their manipulation. How much do you think I've given them? He whispered, though I could hear the fear in his voice. It was time for the truth. Based on what you've told me, probably over $5,000. And that's not counting what I've helped with. The number hit him like a punch. $5,000, months of extra shifts, missed rest, sacrifices he never should have had to make. All given to people who were laughing behind closed doors. I need to talk to Sienna, he said suddenly, a sharp determination in his voice I hadn't heard in a long time. I need to confront her and hear what she has to say. Are you sure you're ready for that? I asked. Because once this conversation happens, there's no going back. Things will change, no matter how she responds. He didn't answer right away. He stood there staring at the photos again and again, absorbing the truth, not just the financial betrayal, but the emotional one. The betrayal from the woman he loved. Mom, he finally said, his voice low but steady, thank you for showing me this. I know it must have been hard to decide whether to tell me or not, but you were right. I needed to know the truth. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling a mix of relief and dread. The truth was out now, but the fallout was only beginning. What are you going to do now? I asked quietly. I'm going home tonight, Owen said, a resolve in his voice I hadn't heard in months. And I'm having a serious conversation with my wife. Depending on what she says. I'm going to make some important decisions about our future. When he left my apartment, he walked out with a determination I had prayed to see again. I, however, stayed awake for hours, unable to rest, imagining how that confrontation would unfold. I knew the next few hours could reshape our entire family. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Owen. The moment I heard his voice, I knew everything had changed. There was pain, anger, and strangely, a soft thread of relief. Mom, he said, without even greeting me, you were right. About everything. What happened, son? I asked gently, though the heaviness in his voice told me enough. He explained that before confronting Sienna, he went to their bedroom and did something he'd never done, looked through her things. He told me he'd always trusted her completely, so he never felt the need to check anything. But what he found left him stunned. Hidden in the closet were shopping bags from high-end stores, each with receipts showing hundreds of dollars spent on clothes and accessories. He also found jewelry, pieces he'd never once seen her wear, still with the tags attached. But then he said, Mom, that wasn't even the worst part. In her purse, he found a notebook. Not a journal. Not a planner. A ledger. Inside, Sienna had written down every single lie she told him over the past 2 years, every emergency, every fabricated crisis, every excuse to ask him for money. Each one listed like entries in a business account. My stomach dropped. This was worse than manipulation, this was a system. And what else was written in that notebook? I asked, though I was almost afraid to hear the answer. There were plans, he said bitterly. She already had the next lie ready. A supposed dental emergency for her mother. $1,800. She even wrote down ways to guilt me if I questioned her. The cold strategy of it made my skin crawl. This wasn't confusion or misunderstanding, this was deliberate exploitation. And when you confronted her? I asked. At first, she denied everything, he said. She claimed the bags were gifts from friends. That the notebook was for household budgeting. That I was reading too much into it. But when I showed her the grocery receipts, you had, everything changed. How? I asked. She exploded, he said. She yelled that I had no right to go through her belongings, that my family never accepted her, and that this was your fault, that you'd poisoned me against her. The words stung, but they didn't shock me. Manipulators always turn into victims when the truth corners them. But the part that shook me most, Owen continued, was when she finally admitted it. He went silent for a moment before speaking again. She told me her family was never struggling. That Leonard has a steady income. And that the whole thing, every story, every emergency, was a strategy to take advantage of my generosity. She actually used that phrase, Mom, take advantage. She told me I was easy to convince, and that my family had enough money to share. My heart broke hearing his voice tremble. They hadn't just lied, they had calculated him like an opportunity. The conversation went on for more than an hour, he said. He told me lie after lie he'd uncovered, details that painted a picture of a family who treated deception like a craft. I even called Leonard, Owen said. I wanted to hear it from him. At first, he stuck to the story. But when I told him I already knew the truth, he confessed. I could barely breathe. What did he say? He said they'd chosen me because I had a stable job and a family who could help financially. He said it wasn't personal, that it was just business. Just business. About my son's life. His heart. His marriage. It was almost too much to absorb. And Sienna? I whispered. What did she do when he admitted it? Owen gave a short, bitter laugh. She yelled at him for ruining her plan. She wasn't upset about hurting our marriage. She was upset she couldn't keep lying to me. For the next hour, Owen told me everything he'd uncovered, the fake medical emergencies, the invented work problems, the endless excuses. Even the so-called bargain finds had a simple explanation, they just bought whatever they wanted with the money he sent. Mom, he finally said, his voice breaking, the worst part isn't even the money. It's realizing that for 2 years. I never really knew the woman I married. Everything was an act. Everything. And what are you going to do now, son? I asked, though I already had a sense of the answer from the tone in his voice. I've already told Sienna our marriage is over tonight, Owen said firmly. There's no way to rebuild trust after such a calculated and systematic betrayal. Tomorrow, I'm starting the divorce proceedings. Even knowing he was making the right choice, my heart ached for him. No one should discover that the person they loved had been deceiving them so carefully, so completely, for so long. I also made it very clear that they won't get another cent from our family, he continued. And if they try contacting you for help, I want you to tell them exactly what I think of their methods. Of course, son, I said. They will never receive help from us again. Mom, he said softly before hanging up, thank you for having the courage to show me the truth. I know it must have been so difficult, especially knowing it could destroy my marriage, but you saved me from years of being used and manipulated. After the call, I sat in the dark of my apartment, letting the weight of it all settle in. The truth had finally come out, but at a heavy cost. Owen's marriage had ended. His trust had been shattered. And he now faced the daunting task of rebuilding his life from scratch. Yet I knew, deep down, that this revelation had freed him from a trap that would only have grown worse over time. Sienna and her family would never have stopped. They would never have confessed willingly. And they likely would have escalated their manipulations, draining every ounce of my son's resources. The following months were a slow process of healing and rebuilding for our family. Owen moved into a small apartment near his job while he processed the divorce and reorganized his life. I stood by his side every step of the way, offering the emotional support he needed to recover from the betrayal. The legal process revealed even more about the extent of the deception. Owen's lawyers discovered that Sienna had hidden significant assets throughout their marriage. A secret bank account, hidden purchases, everything designed to maintain the appearance of financial need while secretly enjoying a luxurious lifestyle. "Mom," Owen told me during one of our weekly meals, "the lawyer calculated that over our 2 years of marriage, I sent them more than $15,000. $15,000 I could have used to buy a house, invest in my future, or help you when you needed it." The number hit me like a punch. Years of honest work, of sacrifices made out of trust, had gone to people who saw him not as a person, but as an easy source of money. Yet, even through this pain, I felt a spark of pride. Owen was growing stronger and wiser from the experience. Sienna and her family tried repeatedly to contact me. Leonard called, pleading for me to intercede with Owen, promising to return the money and never ask for help again. I'd heard enough. "Leonard," I said firmly, "you had 2 years to be honest with my son. You chose lies, manipulation, and deceit. Now you must live with the consequences." Sienna made one last attempt at manipulation, showing up unannounced at my apartment. Simple clothes, no makeup, trying to play the role of the vulnerable, repentant wife. But I knew her tricks too well. "Adeline," she said, tears in her eyes that looked rehearsed, "I know we made mistakes, but I really loved Owen. This got out of control, but we never meant to hurt him." "Sienna," I replied calmly, my voice steady, "real love doesn't include systematic lies and calculated manipulation. What you did wasn't love. It was exploitation disguised as love." She tried every angle: repentant victim, desperate wife, daughter-in-law seeking family harmony, but every strategy only confirmed what I already knew. "The money you took from my son isn't just money," I told her firmly. "It represents his trust, his future, and his ability to believe in the people he loves. That can't be returned with apologies or promises." Finally, after more than an hour of failed manipulation attempts, Sienna revealed her true colors. Her expression hardened, and she said coldly, "I always knew you were the problem in this marriage. Owen would have been happy if you hadn't meddled." "Maybe," I replied calmly. "But he would have been happy while being deceived and exploited. I'd rather him be temporarily unhappy, but free, than happy yet used." After that confrontation, I never heard from Sienna or her family again. According to Hermione, they moved out of the neighborhood a few weeks later, probably to avoid the embarrassment of everyone discovering the truth about their methods. Owen's recovery was gradual but steady. At first, he was angry at himself for being so trusting. But with time, he realized that his generosity and trust were not weaknesses, they were qualities that had been exploited by unscrupulous people. "Mom," he said during a dinner near his new apartment, "I've been thinking about everything that happened. I realize I've learned something important. Generosity must be accompanied by wisdom, and trust must be earned and maintained, not given blindly." With the money he no longer sent to Sienna's family, Owen began rebuilding his finances. He opened a savings account, invested in his professional future, and for the first time in years, allowed himself small luxuries without guilt. He also helped me improve my own situation, insisting on giving me money to buy new appliances and visiting me more frequently, bringing quality food we could share without worry. "It's ironic," he reflected one day as we shared a meal he had bought. "All this time, I was worried about helping a family that didn't need it, while you, who actually could use support, never asked for anything." His observation moved me deeply. During Sienna's manipulation, I had silently watched my son exhaust himself trying to meet their constant demands while I remained quiet about my own needs to avoid adding pressure to his life. 6 months after the divorce, Owen had found balance. He had learned caution without cynicism, and wisdom without losing the ability to trust those who truly deserved it. "Mom," he said during one of our Sunday walks in the park, "I want to thank you again for having the courage to show me the truth. I know it was difficult to decide whether to intervene. Son, I replied, a mother must always protect her children, even when it hurts. My job isn't just to love you, it's to ensure the people you say you love truly deserve you. The grocery store cashier, Eli, also became an unexpected but welcome presence in our lives. One day he visited me, curious about the outcome, and we ended up talking for hours about the importance of speaking up when we witness injustice, even if it's uncomfortable. You know, Mrs. Thorne, Eli said before leaving, my mother went through a similar situation years ago, and no one had the courage to tell her the truth. By the time everything was discovered, she had lost all her life savings. Some truths hurt, but silence hurts more. Looking back now, I feel both pain for what my son endured and pride for the strength he showed in facing the truth. I learned that true family love sometimes requires speaking difficult truths, confronting uncomfortable situations, and protecting loved ones, even if it shatters illusions. That day, when I heard those strange words at the grocery store and chose to observe instead of ignore, I changed the course of our lives forever. 2 years have passed since that afternoon. Owen remarried 6 months ago. His new wife, Regina, is a hard-working, honest woman he met at the office. What I admire most isn't just her transparency, it's her respect for our relationship. She has never interfered in our family matters or shown interest in our finances. The first time Regina came to my house for dinner, she brought the ingredients for us to cook together. Adeline, she said as we prepared the vegetables, I want you to know I will never ask you or Owen for money. I believe in working for what I need and being honest about what I can afford. Her words moved me to tears, not only for her honesty, but because I realized how deeply traumatized I had been by Sienna's deception. For months after the divorce, every new acquaintance made me cautious, analyzing motivations and searching for signs of manipulation. The healing process was long, for both Owen and me. Owen even went through periods of depression, questioning if he could ever fully trust anyone again. Mom, he said during late-night calls, how can I be sure I won't be deceived again? How can I tell the difference between someone who truly loves me and someone who only sees opportunity? Those conversations broke my heart, because Sienna's betrayal had affected not only his finances but his ability to trust. Yet, over time, I was proud to see him rebuilding his confidence, more mature and wiser. During the first year after the divorce, Owen developed what he called his verification system. Before helping anyone financially, he would ask for documentation, speak with multiple sources, and take time to evaluate the consistency of their story. At first, I worried he had become too distrustful, but he had simply learned to balance generosity with practical wisdom. He no longer gave money impulsively, but after careful, rational evaluation. This approach served him well when a coworker once requested funds for a supposed medical emergency. Owen verified the documents and spoke to the hospital directly, only to discover the story was a lie. Mom, he said after exposing the deception, this system isn't just about money. It's about protecting myself and others I care about from being taken advantage of. 2 years ago, I would have sent the money without asking a single question. Now, I understand that verifying isn't distrusting, it's protecting yourself from people who seek to exploit the kindness of others. For my part, I also had to process my own feelings about what had happened. For months, I carried guilt for having waited so long to speak up, wondering how much money we could have saved if I had acted sooner. But with time, I realized that I acted at the right moment, when I had enough evidence to be convincing. The grocery store cashier, Eli, who had first alerted me to the situation, became a dear family friend. He and his wife, Marlene, visit us regularly, and we've developed a friendship based on honesty and mutual support. You know, Adeline, Eli said during one of his visits, what I admire most is how you handled the truth. Many people would have made a scene, yelled, or sought revenge. You simply presented the facts and let the truth do its work. His words reminded me of a lesson I had learned during this ordeal: silent dignity is far more powerful than noisy revenge. I never sought to hurt Sienna or her family. I simply stopped allowing them to hurt us. Hermione, the neighbor who had provided additional information about Sienna's family, also became a close friend. She helped me understand that what we experienced isn't unusual. Many generous, trusting families fall prey to manipulative people. My son-in-law works in social services, Hermione told me, and these kinds of family scams are more common than people think. Some people turn manipulation into a way of life. This perspective helped me understand that we hadn't been particularly naive. We had simply been targeted by experts at exploiting emotions and family ties. Financially, the impact was significant but manageable. Owen calculated that, including my contributions and some loans that were never repaid, we lost around $15,000. Yet once the flow of money to that family stopped, our situation improved dramatically. Owen was able to save for a down payment on a small house. He invited me to live with him and Regina, but I preferred the independence of my own apartment, albeit now with better furniture and appliances that he insisted on buying. "Mom," he said when he brought the new refrigerator, "for years, I watched you count coins while I sent hundreds of dollars to people who didn't need it. Now, it's your turn to have the things you deserve." Regina, Owen's new wife, turned out to be not only a good partner to him but also a considerate daughter-in-law to me. She never tried to compete with my place in Owen's life and always included me in her family plans. The difference from Sienna's attitude was so stark that sometimes I could hardly believe both women existed in the same world. Last month, Regina confided that they are expecting their first child. The news filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in years. "I want our child to know you as the grandmother who had the courage to protect our family," Regina told me, holding my hand. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never decided to hide behind those trash dumpsters to observe Leonard. How long would the deception have continued? Would Owen have discovered the truth on his own, or would he have been exploited indefinitely? I'll probably never know. What I do know is that facing uncomfortable truths is one of the most important responsibilities we have toward those we love. In these 2 years, I've reflected on the signs I ignored, the small details that didn't add up, the overly convenient explanations, Sienna's perfect stories for every situation. Now I understand that my maternal instincts were trying to warn me, but I silenced them to avoid conflict. I've learned that maintaining family peace should never come at the cost of allowing exploitation. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is creating the necessary conflict to protect the people who matter most. Today, at 69, I feel wiser and stronger than I have in decades. Not only because I helped save my son from a destructive situation, but because I proved that it's never too late to be brave, to stand up for what is right, and to protect those we love. True strength isn't in avoiding problems, it's in facing them with dignity. And sometimes, the most difficult decisions are the most correct, even if their full impact is only understood with time. As I write these reflections, I can hear Owen and Regina laughing in the kitchen, preparing Sunday dinner. It is the sound of a genuine family, built on honesty and mutual respect. That sound is worth more than all the money we lost during the years of deception. In the end, the most valuable thing we have isn't money, it's the authentic relationships we build and protect. And no one can ever take that away from us.